Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another dispatch, another week. And I thought I would switch gears a little bit and read from an interview with Andrew Forge uh, from an exhibition at the Rhode Island College in 2001. This is a conversation between Sarah Sands, an old friend of mine, an old painting buddy, and Andrew Forge. I guess in light of his upcoming or ongoing exhibition that was happening. And I think it's short enough to get into one dispatch. If it gets long, I'll pause. Anyway, it's a beautiful day here. I think I'm going to go outside and landscape paint myself. It's just so beautiful. And then we've got this week coming up, the workshop, which will be great. Anyway, okay, without further ado. So, Sarah Sands, could you talk about some of the recent changes in your work, especially how incorporating various symmetrical structures came about? Andrew Forge. Are we recording? I think we're recording. Should be, yes. Andrew Forge. Well, I wish I had his British accent. Unfortunately, I really don't. Well, it's quite a long story. As you know, since I started working with dots, I've been very interested in the way in which the dot itself seems to invite different viewings. You want to look at them close. You want to see what the dots are doing when you've got your nose stuck in them. Then you want to stand back and see what they do at a distance. I've always found it interesting. And I've noticed that other people have found it interesting to wander about and to find that kind of middle ground between a long shot and a close-up. And I've rather treasured the fact that people seem to be engaged in that kind of dialogue with the paintings. I've loved that. Well, now, alongside that has been a long-standing interest in sculpture. And particularly in the kind of experience that you have when you're looking at a fairly frontal sculptural object. And of course, my favorite things that my mind goes back to are those Roman torsos that have lost their heads and lost their limbs. And you just come across them in the museum, stuck up on a plinth, and there's just this huge, great slab of a part of a human figure. And the way in which the torso itself seems to somehow address your own physical presence. Back in the mid-'80s, I painted a bunch of paintings that related to that sort of theme of the torso. When I was working on them, I became very interested in the fact that the canvas itself has something of that. One becomes aware not just of the flatness of the canvas, but also of its frontality, the way that it faces you, the way that in a certain mood, you can feel your own shoulders in the top corners of the canvas and your hips, if you like, in the bottom corners of the canvas, and the center of your body in the center of the canvas. That, I suppose, almost is on the threshold of being a sculptor's way of looking at the presence of the canvas. The canvas as a frontal slab rather than simply a flat pictorial surface. And I think that these two preoccupations, one with the distancing back and forth in front of an array of dots, and the much more physical confrontation with what I call the slab of the canvas, worked together and made me ask myself whether there wasn't a possibility of bringing them out as, if you like, not separate, but parallel themes in the painting. And it seemed to me that the obvious way of doing that would be to actually implant a kind of symmetrical array into the painting that one could identify as a physiognomy coming straight back at you from the canvas. Could perhaps make you aware more clearly of your own physical presence in front of the painting. And then behind that, the much more complex and complicated and asymmetrical world of the dots. Sarah Sands. Because the paintings are made from an accumulation of dots, there must be very long stretches of time when you are painting quite close up to the canvas. Can you say something about that experience? Andrew. Believe it or not, I spend much more time really close up to a canvas than I do at a distance. I like to tell myself that I only look at it from a distance when it's time to go to lunch. I put my brushes down and I stand at the door and look back at what's been happening. I don't always know what it's going to look like at a distance. And I certainly don't continually stand back to see what's going on, because that breaks the spell in a way. I always remember two stories about painting that very, very often come to mind. One is that account of Turner on varnishing day, completing a painting with his nose almost touching the painting, and a blob of red turns into a buoy floating on the harbor, and a huge great lump of gray becomes a beautiful delineated cloud. And his fellow academicians, who were fascinated to know what he was doing, were astonished to see him just shut up his box and put his hat on his head and walk away without even looking back at the painting, which has now miraculously turned into Calais Harbor or something like that. This is laughs. He laughs there. And the other thing is that remark in one of Van Gogh's letters when he was on his way to Arles from Paris. He and Theo visit Seurat, who was working on the Grand Jetty. And Vincent records his astonishment at seeing that Seurat was right up close and wasn't standing back at all. And in a way, those two stories encourage me, laughs again, in my madness, because it is what, for me, happens right close up that matters. That is the generative thing. Sarah. Thinking in terms of chance and types of activities that can't be consciously controlled, it would seem that painting that close up in some ways is circumventing Andrew. Yes, above all, it is a way of circumventing big decisions, so complex that you can't really reduce them to clear-cut decisions. And working close up, you can always say to yourself, is that it? Or is it not it? Is that dot in the right place or is it not in the right place? Does that dot sing out against its neighbor or does it not? And you can bring the decision-making to a point of incisiveness that I find terribly hard to bring to the painting as a whole. I'm going to repeat that. You can bring the decision-making to a point of incisiveness that I find terribly hard to bring to the painting as a whole. Decision-making. Something in that. It's critical. The energy in decision-making, making clear decision in some ways is more important than anything else. All right, sorry. La, 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 la. And I distrust it when I feel as if I am trying to make large global decisions about the painting as a whole. I always distrust that. So, really, what I am saying, I think, is that I want my paintings to be the sum of very many, almost beyond counting, individual decisions, each one of which I bring as much energy to beat on as I can. Oh, to bear on as I can. Glasses. I'll read that again. So, really, what I am saying, I think, is that I want my paintings to be the sum of very many, almost beyond counting, individual decisions, each of which I bring as much energy to bear on as I can. Yes, this is fabulous. I mean, that's the thing, right? In some ways, of course, we want the composition as a whole to work and all of those pieces. And yet, in some mysterious way, it is the energy that goes into the making, the marking, that becomes more crucial, more essential than anything else. It's the energy that we bring to bear. And so there's something about decision making that allows our engagement, our life force to move into the paint. All right, maybe I'll pause there because it'd get long. Oh, well, yeah. Okay, we'll pause there, and I'll carry on next week. Why not? Maybe I'll throw in some images along with the PDF of the interview. All right. Well, hope you're all doing well. Painting, drawing, making stuff, keeping sane. Okay. Take care. Be well. Bye-bye.